Thank you everyone for joining us today. We are excited to have this conversation. My name is Eunice Shin. I'm a partner with Profit. We are a growth consultancy working across digital transformation initiatives and really working with our clients across growth and the agenda around growth. And whether that's from a overall strategy perspective or down to an execution level, we are working with some very exciting clients, and we're super excited to share with you one of our most exciting clients, Canoo. And so I'm joined today with Oscar Wang, who's also an AP with Profit, and I'll let her introduce herself and introduce Canoo.
Hi, I'm Oscar Wang, based in Chicago. I've been with the company for 15-ish years, and I'm so excited with the year we're having here. We're finally into Q4 and to hang out with some of my old friends from Canoo. These guys, Veronica, Bob, and Lucy, they're from this super cool company called Canoo. It's electric vehicle subscription model, and Jay Leno recently drove it on one of his shows. And they just announced intention to IPO. So it's in my experience, it's one of the coolest companies I've ever had the pleasure to work with.
Great. So if we wanted to maybe go around and maybe start with Veronica, if you could give us, tell us more about who you are and what you do at Canoo.
Yeah, for sure. So nice to be here. Thanks so much for having us, first of all. I'm in charge of corporate communications at Canoo, and content as well. So I handle our podcast, work with Bob closely on blog, any of our PR, external communications, and primarily crafting our message to the external world. So the research that we did with Profit was obviously a huge part of shaping what that needed to look like. So before, I've been with Canoo for about 2 years now. Before that, I came from aerospace and defense. I worked for a commercial aircraft leasing firm for about 6 years. That's how I wound up here.
Awesome. Well, we're glad you're with us. Bob, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yes, once again, I'm excited to be here as well. And thanks for the invite, and excited to chat more about Canoo and all the work that we're doing. But my name is Bob, and I'm currently leading the marketing at Canoo. I have a lot of background in social media and community. I've been at Canoo for a little over a year. Prior to Canoo, I was at another D2C company for almost 5 years called MeUndies, where we sold men's and women's underwear and basics and loungewear. And I was like one of the early employees there, and saw that brand grow to what it is today. But underwear to electric vehicles is the most natural move for anybody's career.
Absolutely.
So,
Yep.
But to be honest, what really drove me to Canoo is obviously the electric vehicle space. And then also being a D2C company and focusing on subscription. At MeUndies, we had a subscription for underwear and basics, but now I'm working for a company for an electric vehicle subscription. So exciting times.
That's why we're such old friends. We met at MeUndies, right? And I followed you, yeah.
Yes.
And Lucy, please introduce yourself.
Again, super excited to be here. My name's Lucy. I am leading the subscription efforts that we're doing currently at Canoo. So that's figuring out what should we include and how does that really come to life, both digitally in the application and then also in the real world. So super exciting stuff. We've been really busy in the last year getting all that sorted. But prior to Canoo, I've been here for about a year. I worked at Uber for over 5 years. So I launched ride sharing in Western Australia and the Australian markets before sort of being in different roles around APAC, and then ended up on the product marketplace team based in San Francisco. So I'm not entirely new to the mobility space, but I'm excited to be chatting to you guys.
Fantastic. Well, we also want to get to know a little bit more about our participants today. So we're going to throw up a quick poll just to get a perspective on who's joining. So if you could do us a favor and answer that, then we can help to kind of craft our conversation around maybe the areas of interest. But, without a doubt, DTC has fundamentally changed our world, right? And I think the fundamental changes around customers. Customers expect service in a different way. They expect communication and transparency, and look at brands with a different sense of loyalty and truly at the end of the day around the experience around a brand. DTC has fundamentally fundamentally changed that. And so whether you're a digital native or you're a heritage brand, there's so many things to look at from a DTC perspective. So, it's really changed. And probably, Lucy, you know better than anyone else, when you first launched Uber, the world is very different today than where Uber was when Uber launched. Right. So it's a very much a DTC evolved marketplace. There's different demands on DTC companies around profitability and building out sustainable models. So, and the cost of customer acquisition has skyrocketed. So there's a lot of different, things where from a acquisition standpoint and cost standpoint, the playbook is no longer a playbook. And really it's about customized strategies for a company. So it's interesting to see. Here's a poll. Let's share the results real quick. We have a lot of folks that are exploring and learning. Fantastic, and we have some folks here that are looking to launch a new DTC brand and some with a DTC brand. So great, perfect. That's great. Well, let's get into some questions. And so, Oscar mentioned a little bit about Canoo, but Veronica, could you share with us a little bit more about who Canoo is, what your vision is in this great fun world of 2020 and also beyond?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're, as you mentioned, we're an EV kind of startup, a new player in the EV space. We're based out of Los Angeles. And what we're really kind of trying to do is envision a world where cities are greener and less stressful for the people that live in them. So what we did is we built we're kind of reinventing the automotive landscape in a lot of different ways. But the first thing that we did, as you mentioned, is kind of go for a subscription-based model. So our first vehicle, which is set to launch in Q2 of 2022, will be available 100% by subscription only. So you'll never be able to buy the vehicle. It's a month-to-month subscription with no long-term commitment. Think like Spotify or Netflix, everything's included. So Lucy can obviously speak to this. She's in charge of this, but we talk about including things like maintenance, registration, access to insurance and charging, stuff like that. As far as our first vehicles go, the core technology that Canoo's really built on is our skateboard architecture. So we built a platform, a skateboard platform is what we call it, that houses all the components of the electric powertrain in a flat sort of architectured chassis that goes at the bottom of the vehicle. So why that's important is that there's no stuff in the cabin. So it allowed us to completely open up the interior space of the vehicle. Right now, there's really no need for electric vehicles to look like traditional internal combustion engine cars, but today they all still do. They have a grille, they have a hood, there's no engine compartment, a grille isn't functional on an electric vehicle. So we kind of tried to just think beyond those things and think beyond those limitations. And we built a vehicle that's perfect for city life. So it has all of this space in the interior that you want, and it's on a compact exterior footprint. So you're looking at, like the parking spot size of like a Volkswagen Golf with the interior space of, a Yukon Denali or something. So it's really exciting to kind of think about evolving the landscape in that way, right? Because things have been done so similarly for so long, and it's unique that we're such a new player in the space. We're able to really think about doing things differently. But yeah, like I said, that skateboard architecture will serve as the basis for all of our future vehicles. We currently have 2 other vehicle programs planned at this time. One will be a delivery vehicle that we expect to hit the road in 2023. So last mile delivery, Amazon, UPS, these little systems, kind of, as you said, everything's expected to get there within a couple of days, on demand, all that type of stuff. So last mile delivery is a big market for us. And then the other area that we'll also be looking at a little on later down the road is a sport vehicle, or like a commuter vehicle, that will be based on the same chassis, have a little bit less interior space, but a little bit more performance features. So maybe a longer range we're looking at, something like that, where you could really take it for the day-to-day commute type of thing. But as Oscar kind of mentioned, we recently announced that we're planning to go public at the end of the year through a merger with Hennessy Capital Acquisition Corporation. So that's a hugely exciting moment for us. If everything goes to plan, that would help bring our vehicles onto the road in 2022 without independent fundraising afterwards. So it's just everything in a startup life has been moving a million miles an hour, and we're just really thrilled to be in the position we are right now. So that's Canoo.
That's fantastic. That was fantastic. Let's show a video. We have a really exciting video that we think is super cool that gives a great snapshot of Canoo. So let's play that real quick. Yay. I feel like we should clap for
Very
that.
cinematic. Yeah.
It's awesome. So what's interesting is when you come to market with something disruptive and new, the biggest challenge is figuring out, well, who is this for, right? Who are our customers? Bob, can you share with us a little bit more about, who you think your target customers are, who you're finding out there that's interested in a product such as this?
Yeah, definitely. I think, well, one, that video always just gets me like really excited. Even that video is like a year old. But I think, as we mentioned, and as Vero's mentioned, like we've created a product and a vehicle that's very specific to city life and urban environments. So I think geographically that already makes it pretty specific of us narrowing where we want to go or where our target consumer is. But within that, I would say we're definitely targeting millennials. But within the millennial space, we've broken it down into multiple segments of based on their quant and qual of their behaviors with electric vehicles, their behaviors with other brands, their behaviors with media, what they consume, where are they consuming it, talent and influencers and all of that. So like we do have that data, and thanks to Profit for helping us get that data and helping narrow it down based on those segments within the millennial space, but also understanding like what makes them tick, what is their relationship with their current vehicle, what's their relationship with electric vehicles, if they have electric vehicles, maybe what's been barriers for them to get into electric vehicles. So we have all that data, and now we're able to start really testing it, and through a lot of different marketing tactics and stuff to see what is really sticking with them. I think it should also be noted within our segments and within electric vehicle space, you might think immediately that, hey, your target consumer is maybe the people that, are very sustainably focused or very focused on environments and stuff. And yes, that is, one of our segments, but it's actually not our leading segment. So we're actually going to be targeting a variety of different people within these urban spaces. The ones that are, love to explore their city, they are definitely looking for convenience. They're familiar with subscription offerings from all different types of brands, but they also are looking for, I would say, also a luxury experience. And I mentioned the millennial space and them kind of being that, that large demographic that we're heading after, but we also are keeping in mind that Gen Z is right behind them. You need to understand that Gen Z is going to have a completely different relationship with their vehicle, given that they've grown up in a time where Uber and Lyft and ride sharing are just very common. They're probably not going to want to go to the DMV. They're probably not going to want to go to the dealership. And also understanding that, I think actually a good analogy of this with even the millennial space is that, with automatic transmissions and manual transmissions, there was a big transition period with millennials. And I'm a millennial. I don't know how to drive a manual transmission, but I think that's going to be the same for a Gen Z, is that they're only going to be familiar and probably have only driven electric vehicles once they get there. So it's like, we're targeting millennials, but we also need to understand, Gen Z is right behind them, and they can be very, very important in amplifying our message and getting bought in at a very young age. So it's pretty exciting. And I think all the work that Profit helped bring to us, all the research and stuff, is really going to set us up for success when we launch in 2022.
And if I may intersect for a second, I think what was super inspiring for us as outsiders to join you as part of the journey was the point, the timing of when we partnered together, is clearly there was a clear vision, a radical different vision than the electric vehicles that are already out there. As we were looking at Canoo and comparing with other offers, it seemed like a radical departure from what's been known as EV. It's unapologetically, this is how we could imagine the EV to be without the combustion engine in the car. There's so much more space that's freed up. There's so much more you can accomplish with a vehicle. So at that point, with a clear vision, and as you guys were starting to unveil the car to the world, this point of time, really understanding what the customers are looking for, what are other potential customers looking for, what could really hit the button with them, and then you're actually using the segmentation, all of that in the execution phase, and evolving that as you go. It's such an inspiring thing to watch, such a luxury actually to do that in that point of time, and so that everything is directed and strategic.
Right.
Mhm.
And if I could just jump in, with regards to exactly, I think what you said is exactly true. Tesla did a really good job of bringing electric vehicles to the mass market and making them recognizable, making us comfortable with them, right? But we've seen, NIO is another player that's come in. Tesla stock is obviously through the roof. There's a bunch of other EV startups out there in the market right now. But what we're kind of starting to see is that the demand for these electric vehicles is sort of beginning to outpace the supply. And I think people are ready for something different now. They've gotten familiarized with these other vehicles that look more traditional and have more of the traditional features. But I think now, kind of like what you were saying, we're at a very unique position to be able to pivot and be more agile and do something completely different. So it was really exciting to be able to take the research that we did with you guys and use that to really develop our customer identity and our brand identity as a whole, right?
That's right.
Yeah, and I think as well, because if anyone is familiar with the waitlist that we have, we send out surveys. So we've been sending out a lot of surveys around subscription, ranging from, are you familiar with like EVs? Who do you charge with? What do you think of currently service and maintaining your car? A whole range of things. And then we can actually take those responses that we have and put them into the typing tool to understand exactly how many and which segments we actually have on our waitlist, and watch those segments sort of grow and change over time, which has been really awesome. And then as well, just being able to have an always on feedback loop with our waitlist has been incredibly important to remain sort of like resource light with subscription, and be able to have people who are organically mainly interested in Canoo. It's been a really useful tool and really important.
I've been just womaning. Last time I checked, that was a position 451, and then I slacked a little bit, didn't do the survey. It dropped to the position 3000. So there's a gamification you guys are doing that actually pushes people up if you're engaging more, do more referrals. If you build it, they will come. But if you use what they're saying to continue to build it, they will keep coming, and more of them will come. So inspiring.
I think Bob can probably speak to this a little bit better, but something that's a little bit unique about our company as well is that we launched our product, or we revealed our product 2 years before launching it. So we have a really long lead time to keep people engaged and keep people kind of involved with what we're doing. So Bob, I turn it over to you, but I think gamifying the wait lists and stuff is kind of a unique way that we had to try to, being a direct to consumer brand without a product in the market yet, we had to kind of work with that a little bit.
Yeah, I think a common theme is that, even based on what Oscar said, is like, we know the playbooks out there for all the traditional OEMs, and then obviously the Tesla, and how to bring a vehicle to market. And we like rethought everything from even on that side. And we even rethought what our product looks like, So I think that's kind of like our DNA, if you will, our brand DNA, from our product to our membership to our brand. And we took that then to our wait list, because all these other wait lists that are out there, or reservation lists, you hop in line, you put down deposit, it's static, and you just wait your turn until you get your delivery. We wanted to completely flip that on its head with our wait list. Our wait list is dynamic, as Oscar was mentioning, based on your engagement level of filling out surveys, referring friends, you can move up in line. What's great about that then is when we come to launch, we have our most passionate Canoo fans receiving the vehicle first. And what does that do then with launch is they are then referring, and they are telling all their friends, and it's our those early adopters and those brand evangelists are the ones with the actual vehicle itself, and out there singing our praises and driving around and probably promoting it even more. So I think that is something that we're really excited about. And obviously, we gamified it. Your position in line, who's in front of you, who's behind of you. We just released badges, so you can earn badges and based on milestones of how long you've been on the wait list and your engagement level and stuff. So that's really exciting. That's just some of the that's just another example of how we're completely rethinking everything. And I think that's what is, very common with any D2C brand, and that what D2C brands should be thinking is like, how can we create a better relationship with our customers or our future customers?
Yeah. That's amazing, by the way, right? Because that's what folks are going after, finding their brand tribes, finding their most loyal customers, and finding people who are going to be engaged on an ongoing basis. And you've done that before you've even have a vehicle on the road. So that's pretty fantastic. And I think what the benefit is that in launching now that you've learned a lot of lessons based upon past DTC and past EV. Lucy, would be interesting to get your perspective on what's actually been hard, right? Like, given that the world has evolved a bit, there's a lot of things you've benefited from learning, but there's probably also new challenges and differences in launching a brand now than when you were perhaps involved in launching Uber in Australia. Would love your perspective on that.
Yeah, so I think one of the key differences is obviously when ride sharing was launched in the US and around the world, first thing that people thought was like, I'm not getting in the car with a stranger, you're crazy. And really it was just that one problem you were trying to solve, where it was getting people comfortable to get into a vehicle with a stranger. But with Canoo, it's sort of three different things. It's a really unique design of the vehicle, and it's also electric. And there is sort of a lot of concerns around range anxiety and cost associated with EVs. Then you have subscription and a flexible monthly subscription, which is an entire new sort of mobility solution. It sits in between sort of ride sharing and car sharing, and then total vehicle ownership. It sits in this space in between. And then I think those are really two sort of big problems that you're really trying to solve. And I sort of see sort of the EV component a little bit different. Obviously in, for example, Los Angeles or California, there's already like quite a lot of EVs. It has one of the higher penetrations in the market for electric vehicles. But then globally and around the world, they're not as popular or as seen as often. So there's a whole solving for people making the jump over to EVs. And then there's sort of the unique design of the vehicle and trying to explain like, hey, this is how electric vehicles should be designed. Look at all the space you have. And then third, it's trying to get them to get rid of their lease or their financing and say, hey, this is a better alternative. And because we're an all-inclusive subscription, we are going to face some challenges in perception of what people already spend. So people don't realize how much they spend because they don't add in their fuel, their insurance, their service and maintenance, and look at it at a monthly basis. So I think that is going to be one of the bigger challenges in how we communicate to our customers, and really figuring out with an all-inclusive subscription what actually makes sense. So people might not like service and maintenance and sort of organizing that so you can solve that problem. But if you ask them what they want you to come out and service and maintain the vehicle, which is obviously going to have an impact on cost. So it's really looking at each individual item on a spectrum and understanding who our target audience are and where do they sit in sort of their needs and wants for vehicle ownership.
Bob, have you felt, in looking at customers and studying what customers are doing out there, have customer behaviors changed in the current landscape? Obviously, COVID put a curveball for everyone, but I guess post-COVID and aside.
Definitely. They're always evolving. I think it's because D2C brands keep finding ways to, I'm going to keep referencing this. They're finding ways to build better and more strong relationships with their customers. And it can be a variety of different ways, through the product, the service, the customer experience, the support, if anything goes wrong. That's always evolving. And then the expectation of those customers is then always set. And I think a perfect example of this is Amazon Prime and 2-day shipping. Obviously, they were out ahead of everyone else with 2-day shipping. Now all these new D2C brands within the last, I would say, 2 to 3 years have been trying to catch up, because now all the customers expect their shipping and their product to arrive there within 2 days. And if it's even 12 hours late or 24 hours late, they're hitting up customer support because they expect that kind of convenience and that kind of speed behind just something arriving. So I think that's all. I think that's just one example of how it's changing. I think, in the COVID world, I think that's more, I think more people are more lenient on those expectations of brands, obviously fulfillment centers and stuff might not be as, heavily staffed as they are during normal times and stuff. So maybe there are those delays, but I think people's relationship with brands are always, evolving. And I think the D2C space is leading that space because they're able to be directly connected and building that relationship with their, with their customers.
Yeah, that's
And I
fantastic.
think
Go ahead, Lucy.
I was going to say, to add to that, I think it's going to be really interesting. There's not really currently a way that people have a really sort of direct relationship with their automotive OEM. So you get the car and then you go home and then you might go back to the dealership to get a service and maintenance, but you might go somewhere else because there's a mum and pop shop down the road that's cheaper. So it's going to be really interesting, I think, to watch sort of the relationship that we have with our customers evolve when they're active members. So if they have a problem in the car, like something's rattling, they can send us a message or an email or speak to us over the phone to sort of resolve those issues. Or like if they have ongoing issues with the vehicle, or they want to reschedule their service and maintenance, or they just have a question about how charging or something works, they have somebody to go to almost 24/7. And if they're in an accident or something like that, they also have people to sort of go on that journey with them. And that's not something that currently exists for auto. It's sort of like you get the car and then it's sort of done. And then if you lease it, it's like you might see them again when you return the vehicle. But it really is sort of like your problem and your issues from then on. There's nobody that can really go along with you to resolve any issues or help you when you transition into a new vehicle.
And that is a fundamental change, right? It's a fundamental change in terms of the customer experience, in terms of the expectations of consumers, but at the same time, it's very difficult to operationalize that too, right? And so it's very difficult to have those OEMs start to try to have those types of direct relationships and conversations in an authentic, real way. So it's really interesting. But I think to your point, Lucy, we're going to see more and more kind of like the traditional companies try to mimic what's happening in DTC. And, I think that it's just going to kind of propel even further the way that customers are going to expect and demand service and attention and that relationship at the core. So if you know how to do that well, I think that's a huge differentiator in today's market. So we talked about the skateboard product. Veronica, you mentioned that. Let's show a video about the skateboard and would love for you to share with us a little bit more about it.
It is, of course, a dream come true. So after we spent lots of time thinking about it, how we could design it, how we could put the components in to the skateboard, and seeing it now in real and being able to drive away with it, this is definitely a dream come true.
Very
Awesome.
exciting.
It is. Veronica, tell us more about it.
Yeah, so that video was to showcase the performance of the powertrain that I told you guys about, that skateboard technology without a cabin on top of it. So the unique thing about our skateboard is that there's a couple different things, but one of the things that we really went for was true modularity with it. So when we talk about, looking at a consumer market, we're also looking at B2B markets. The skateboard could have licensing applications for other vehicles. You can really build anything you want on top of it. So what we were really trying to showcase in that was just the true adaptability of this to be driven without a cabin. So we had a professional racing driver, who you saw in that video, Sarah Price, take it out into California's Rabbit Dry Lake in the desert and just kind of strap a racing seat and a steering wheel onto it and just kind of go for it. So, the idea with the skateboard, again, like I said, is just that it'll serve as the basis for all of our future vehicles. So it contains all the components of the pure electric powertrain. So in terms of adapting it to a new vehicle program, like I said, for our delivery vehicle or our sport vehicle, we don't have to repeat a lot of those crash tests, because the functional integration and some of the most important structural things are already inside of that skateboard architecture. So another, important thing to know about us as a business and about our journey is that we announced in February that Hyundai will be partnering with us to co-develop a skateboard that they'll use for some of their future vehicles. But that was really exciting for us because it was sort of a huge validation of like our brand new technology. We're a little startup and Hyundai is a household name, so they're going to be using our skateboard for some of their future vehicles. But yeah, like I said, the skateboard is really like the core of all of our technology. It's going to help advance our business in B2B and B2C markets, and also, engineering services markets, other big companies like that.
Very cool.
Yeah.
It's exciting. We had, mentioned a little bit about the work that Profit did with Canoo. And I think in the conversation so far, we've talked about some of the insights and data-driven perspective that you've gone about in terms of execution against your strategy. Oscar, would love for you to maybe describe a little bit more about the work we did with Canoo. And, and Oscar's been so proud of the work, and it's something that we're really proud to be able to talk about because it's exciting. And it's, not only is it important for digital natives that are launching DTC brands, but it's also really important for any B2B company launching a brand as well. So Oscar, can you share with us a little bit more about our work?
Absolutely. Our teams have been people who are not on the team. They were like, oh, what can we do to get on the team? So we would be so proud of being able to partner with you guys. I think we already covered a lot of it. I'll say two more things. One is when we got to know the teams at Canoo, we recognized this is a team that's it's aiming for something great, is trying to achieve greatness. And we talk about that actually with the executives, Uli, the CEO, and the chief design officer, Richard. From the very beginning, it was to achieve greatness, we need focus. And so that was the project was all about, is who are we going to go after, and how we, all of the how we do it will come after a really clear and focused understanding of the target customer and how big they are. It really is at the intersection of what the business need and what the brand wanted to achieve. And the second thing I would share is something I think we were all really proud of it, all of us, is the collaboration from the start to finish. It's not, Eunice and I have been in this business for a long time, me 15 years. It's not rare to have a good idea. It's not rare to have smart people. It's even less rare to have good consulting services that charge a lot of money. But what's rare is when the vision and the teams and the connective tissues between the teams all get together. From the very get-go, we had multifunctional team members from the design guys, the operation team, the subscription team, the marketing team. We were in that tiny little room with 2 whiteboards. We started just whiteboarding from the first meeting. That is rare. That is everybody in this from all around to try to come up with something that is better for the customer, to use Bob your phrase, as better experience for customers. And honestly, people who self chose to be working for Canoo, these people who didn't think, I'll just say a Tesla was good enough. There must be a better solution. There must be a better way to have a car in the city. And you add on top of it Profit, who is not a white glove consulting company with a lot of black boxes. We have none of those. These teams, they were going to create great products together and have fun in the process and make a difference. And that's what we did. So that's something we're truly proud of, this partnerships, the collaboration, and the clarity it created for the teams in execution.
Bob, you got exposure to working with us on both, I guess, MeUndies as well as at Canoo. Can you give us your perspective on how Oscar and the team and Profit overall helped support you in your efforts?
Definitely, yeah. So this is like the second round with Profit, with my experience. And the first one, of course, came from MeUndies, and I think context there and what led to the decision of working with Profit at Canoo is like at MeUndies, we went through a lot of consumer research, other partners and stuff prior to finding Profit. And I think why we went through so many is because we were never satisfied with the ones prior to Profit. And then once we found and we worked with Profit at MeUndies, we really we were really impressed by how robust and one, the data and the research and the segmentation that we got from them, but also with their, them being partners and being along for the entire process of doing that data research, and how involved they were and how open they were to answering all the questions, because you might have people in there that might be new to this type of research. So no matter what level or what exposure you've had to this kind of data, they can bring you along for the ride and make sure that you're informed. So based on that experience and joining Canoo, we were like, let's start from the beginning and let's start with, the experts that we had experience with in the past. And so we brought Profit on, and obviously they did the same thing. Even from the CEO, C-suite and exec leadership team, all the way down to our marketing team, and bringing this to life and making sure everyone was very informed and understood the work and all of the research and data that we received, and how then we should start implementing it and testing it and really continuing to narrow it, as we would get more and more results from those tests. So overall, just an incredible experience, both rounds. And I think, at Canoo, we wanted to start off on the right foot with the right partner.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's do another poll real quick, just to get a sense for everyone who's kind of still hanging out with us. If we could ask that question. What do you think is the hardest challenge in D2C today? There's many. It's not easy. All right. So while people are answering that, let's answer one of the questions that were posed in the Q&A, and please feel free to keep sending those over. But one of the questions asked from the get-go was, what can B2B brands learn about brand awareness and loyalty from B2C brands? It's interesting. I'll do a quick answer on that, and I'll throw it to someone on Canoo who might want to answer. From my perspective, and the way that we're actually working with a lot of B2B brands within Profit, it's about applying a D2C mindset and what we call D2C mindset and principles. So having direct channels of communication, direct channels directly with clients, with customers. And even though your customers may be buying from a B2B perspective, I always love to remind people that your customers are consumers too. So those same customers who are buying in B2B are used to direct to consumer experiences. So really you need to start to replicate part of that, and communication is number one. Customer service is another area of that, as well as content. For Profit, we look at 3 areas: content, plus commerce, plus community. And all of those 3 have to work in beautiful orchestration for you to really drive commerce. And those are things that you can apply as a direct-to-consumer digital native brand or as a B2B company as well. I don't know if others from Canoo wanted to add to that.
I think I'd add as well, B2B tends to be very sales focused, and the way that they communicate and engage with their customers is sort of ingrained in sort of the metric of like sales numbers. And I think combining that with some sort of customer engagement score or something like that can, I think, help sort of adjust and shift to more of a D2C mindset. Because even some of the inbounds that I get from B2B brands trying to sell me all these different things, I'll have it from 5 different people. It'll be really confusing messages throughout, and it'll just be sort of hammering down like, oh, we think we can sell you this, we think we can sell you this, versus actually asking what problems I'm trying to solve with whatever I'm doing internally. So yeah. I think definitely treating and communicating with them like humans versus just a sales number or a sales target is really important.
Fantastic. Here are the poll results, if y'all can see. Overwhelmingly, I think reaching profitability with sustainable tactics is one of the biggest challenges that we see today. That's for everyone. It's a challenge in in a world where you're from a digital marketing and acquisition standpoint, the marketplace is so concentrated that it's really hard to reach and find customers and to use some of those standard tactics. That has gone kind of out of whack. I don't know, Veronica or Bob or Lucy, if you have a perspective on, your strategy around reaching profitability.
Yeah, I can sort of speak to my experience at Uber. So I was on the marketplace personalization team. So all of those promotions that you were seeing in your application, especially on rides, over the last few years, that was 30%, 20%, 50%, all of those our team managed. And essentially what ended up happening with Lyft and Uber was we created this marketplace of discounts and promotions, which it's very unsustainable to reach profitability. And so that was a really big challenge to try and solve and direct consumers to engage and still ride with Uber, even though we weren't giving them the discounts and essentially an unofficial price cut with some of that stuff, because people were every single week when they were riding, they were receiving these discounts. So I think it's really important whenever you're launching or doing some of these hyper growth tactics that you tend to see in brands today is figuring out an exit strategy and sort of the impact of launching with whatever growth tactic you're doing. Not only how much is it going to cost, but what is it going to cost you when you change that tactic, and you want to bring yourself close towards profitability is going to be really important for us.
Yeah. It's exciting in terms of all that's happening, all the challenges that are there, that, truly there is no DTC playbook for our participants today. If someone is out there trying to sell you a DTC playbook, run for the hills, because one doesn't exist. So, given kind of all the complexities of things, what's on the horizon for Canoo? We talked about the skateboard, we talked about some of the partnerships, but Veronica, maybe if you wanted to dive into that a little bit more. We got a question around, what's coming out, what are some new exciting partnerships, and where are you headed?
Yeah, I think Bob's probably the best person to speak to some of the cool collaborations that we have coming up, some influencer type things, some talent that we're working with, that I'm sure he'll be excited to share with you if he can. I don't know if he can, but we, like I said, we're kind of planning for the delivery vehicle. So we'll probably see some partnerships around that, really trying to push that out and get that out into the market. Lots of local LA based marketing. We're launching city by city as opposed to nationally all at once. So we'll be launching first in Los Angeles, followed by other major cities on the West Coast, and then other major cities in the US. So again, just kind of laser focused on that 2022 launch in LA. So, marketing a lot around that space, also developing our B2B strategy with the skateboard as well as with the delivery vehicle, and going public later this year, hopefully. It's really an exciting kind of time. But I think something that I wanted to touch on earlier, as far as consumer behaviors go, that I think is going to be a big challenge for us, or a very interesting thing to navigate for the next couple of years, is obviously the rebound from COVID. So I think public transportation is probably going to be a less attractive option for a lot of people, especially in an area like LA where public transportation isn't particularly good. People are going to want to be, people that used to do that before COVID probably might not be comfortable anymore. So I think we will see a little bit more of a shift towards people wanting to have personal transportation. And I think our solution could be really, really good for that, because it's 1 month, no long-term commitment. So especially if you're new to electric vehicles, or you're not keen to own a vehicle, if that's not the right solution for you, we're one of the first alternatives out there on the market. So.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, I like to use this analogy that's been used internally a little bit. I didn't come up with it myself, but I think it's a good way to say it. It's like EVs, we're like the new kids on the playground. And when you step foot onto the playground, you have this opportunity to pick who your friends are. So we're like in this period of selecting potential partners, talent, based on the consumer research that we received, which is kind of like our parents telling who you should hang out with. And so now we're going out and finding those people that we should hang out with, because now, given we're 2 years out, a little under 2 years from launching, we want to start selecting who do we want to be friends with, and who do we want to associate our brand with, because then based on who is already, maybe, already has a relationship with that brand, or that influencer, or that talent, that that they're attracted to. We want to associate and become friends with them. And then hopefully then we kind of have a halo effect of that. And, those followers and those fans of those brands, obviously become a fan of ours as well.
That's
Great.
such a great way to put it. I love it.
Yeah, your research, the profit research is our parents.
No, I was more referring to the friends. You can choose your friend, but okay, I'll take that too.
That's awesome. In terms of, the things that are on the horizon and just even the journey so far, what advice would you give to others launching a D2C offering today? Any words of wisdom?
Know your target demographic, know your consumer. You have to know their behaviors. You have to know, their desires, their wishes, their fears. The better that you can identify who is going to buy your product, who's going to be your early source of volume, who's going to, late sources of volume, all that type of stuff, the more data and metrics that you can have on the type of person that you need to sell to, probably the better off you're going to be. That's what I would say.
I think I would add to that, and it kind of like is a springboard from the consumer data, is really invest in the customer experience and support. I think that's where you can really differentiate from any competitors, no matter what industry you are in. So if you invest in that, and we did at MeUndies, and we're going to be doing that at Canoo and building out that team as we get closer to launch. But we think we're kind of a customer experience company, just based on that it's a subscription offering. So really invest in that. And then, the social side and digital side of me is digital first, everything mobile first, every content and thing that you're putting out there, make sure it's eye-catching, is engaging. And I think the best question to ever think of is in marketing is, would I watch that? Would I engage with that? Would I participate in that giveaway? Would I do that? I think that's something you should always consider, and that will kind of like filter out, is the juice worth the squeeze on whatever you're considering in terms of strategy and tactics.
Yeah, and I think on top of that as well, being able to have a plan of how you get this consumer research and actually put it into and develop your offering or operationalize it, or bring it to life on digital. It's really important that you have a plan or a tactic to be able to make that leap. I think it's all well and good to do all of this customer research and all of that, but if you can't make that leap and translate that to your offering, then it's sort of a waste of everyone's time. You need to make sure you have the right skill set and experience on the team for people to be able to take that, whether they're in CRM or on digital or creating the subscription offering or the design of the vehicle. It's really critical that you can actually bring all of that research to life in everything you do. Instead of just having that presentation, sharing it around a couple of times, and then it sits in sort of a file on your computer and that you never touch. It should be something that's constantly referred to and is constantly used.
Right. It's fantastic because it's about data and what you do with the data, right? And the fact, if you have a direct to consumer brand, you have the opportunity to have that first party data, which is challenge number one. But then if you have that data, what do you do with it, right? And to your point, Lucy, it's about keeping it fresh, always looking to it, always making decisions based off of it, rather than it just being, oh, this is a nice to have, and then putting it away. By the way, that's a challenge for lots of companies because it's not intuitive to what they do and how they've been doing work to date. Oscar, would love your perspective too. What would be your recommendation for your word of advice?
I've learned so much from actually working with MeUndies and Canoo. You guys, the way I think there is a real revolution that's going on that's breaking the silos within an organization. So there's an open space where expertise and ideas and data and knowledge can be in almost like a free-flowing space where they can really coalesce into something greater. And that space, I think it's really normal for startups to have that space because it's a very self-selective pool of employees, pool of team members who are really used to that type of collaboration. Of course, we're multi-functional. Of course, we collaborate across the board. Of course, nobody is the doorkeeper to data, but that is not of course, the default for many companies. But that is something, if you think about investment from the business side, that's something that's, you already have the people there, you have the knowledge and expertise. It doesn't require much more capital investment to actually create an environment like that where people can just free flow collaborate. So that's something I've taken away from the MeUndies and the Canoo experiences, helping companies create a openly collaborative space where data can be shared, and then executions can really be talked about. Is it really hitting the needles we wanted to hit on a systematic level? I think that's something, low investment, big impact.
Yeah, I would
Interesting.
definitely agree with that. I think from a Canoo perspective, at least, like one of the things that is, we put a car on the road in 19 months. And we didn't do that by having lots of different siloed teams that were all working different projects. We really have to be, we're moving so fast. We have to be such a tight knit team. So even, Lucy, like, obviously has a lot of critical applications for this research, but I think that in a lot of companies, she wouldn't have been involved in the process technically, because she's more of a operational subscription side of the business, not necessarily this like marketing type of thing. But I think what we've been able to do effectively is, as Oscar kind of said, coalesce all of these different teams into one kind of coherent unit to get this stuff actually make that leap, as Lucy said, to get those things translated into everyday life.
It's fantastic. It's really rich, because I think for a lot of folks, when they look at and how they approach it, it's not, again, they go off of either an existing infrastructure or organization, and they go off of maybe two founders and kind of a vision, and then go from there. And I think what's really interesting about Canoo is the way that you've approached it. I think the other thing I wanted to point out that's really interesting is oftentimes you have a core product when you go and launch a DTC brand, but you guys have launched a core product, but also have really thought about the adjacencies and are applying the adjacencies right off the bat. And again, that gives you an opportunity to test, go to market, test, and to scale, right? So whether it's the skateboard and the strategic partnerships that you have, thinking about ways that you could go to market with the last mile companies. And, there's just so many different applications around that really allows for flexibility, because you won't really know until you actually are live and in market, right? But it gives you many different levers that you can play with. Again, something that a lot of people are not in a great position to be able to have those types of levers.
Right, exactly. We always talk about, we have 3 different paths to revenue. So if one of them dries up or isn't working out, whether it's because of the market or, competition, who knows, right? Like, we still have other revenue sources to rely on.
Yeah. And a great reminder is that what the social media market looked like 5 years ago, and how you could do customer acquisition with paid and social media was 5 years ago. It could have been like 50 years ago, right? Because it doesn't apply today.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And even like, by the way, we're in 2020, but it wasn't that much, we're in the same year where things were very different in a pre-COVID world and in a COVID world and in a post-COVID world. So we really do not know what things are going to look like next year, with the election still to be had, and with a lot of things that are changing in the paid media space and in the digital marketing space, with cookies, without cookies. It's a constantly moving target. So it's tough. It's tough to launch in any type of market. The one thing that, that you have done incredibly well is to anchor on customer. Because if you follow customer, if you follow what customers are thinking, their behaviors, you're always going to meet them there, as opposed to having a product led and just pushing down a product without really having that focus. So I think that's a big differentiator for Canoo from what we're seeing in the marketplace. And I commend you all for all of that amazing strategy and approach. And we wish you luck as you launch soon. For everyone, maybe Bob, maybe last word here about the waitlist. How can people find out more about Canoo and enjoying the waitlist?
Yeah, of course. I think, shameless plug, canoo.com. And then you'll see this little bar that says join the wait list, or even on the menu, the hamburger menu wait list. What's great about our wait list, it's commitment free, unlike all the other wait lists out there where you need to put down $100 to $1,000 to $2,000. You can join for free, and you can participate in filling out surveys, get your own experience for that, referring friends to, once again, a free wait list. And the more friends you refer, you actually unlock Canoo gear that will be shipped to your house. So definitely do that. Follow us on social. There's another shameless plug as I run all of our social handles and stuff. And, you know, tweet at us. You'll be chatting with me and our team and stuff, and ask other questions and stuff. And hopefully you enjoy and you see how different we are in a almost very saturated EV market as it continues to grow. At least for us, there's so many EV startups and stuff out there. And I think in our brand DNA is everyone else is zigging, we're going to zag.
Awesome. That's a great way to end it. Zag, y'all. Everyone zag. Thank you, Veronica, Bob, and Lucy, for joining us, and for all our participants. We hope you found it helpful and useful, and reach out to us if you have any questions.
Thank you so much for having us. It was great
Thanks for
chatting
having
with
us.
you
It was
guys.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, guys.